Hello, rebel scum. Hello, you pathetic excuse for resistance and rebellion. Today we are done talking about Skywalkers and Anakins and Yodas and all those other pathetic people, the goodness, the righteousness that is the Empire. All we want to do is bring you peace, bring you order. And today, those sycophants at Disney have finally decided to tell two of our stories, tales of the Empire. And so today we are here to discuss them with myself, Darth Fox, and my two Padawan learners. Well, not Padawans because, they're not going to be Jedi, but we never actually turned it. Apprentice Erin and Apprentice Alex. We will see how well they speak. There may be consequences to the one who is the most interrupting, but we shall see.
I think the word you're looking for is acolyte.
Acolyte. That is a good one. So, Acolyte Erin, what did you think of the two glorious stories of the Empire that we were treated to?
I had a good time. I watched them on May 4th as I was putting on my Ahsoka makeup.
Mhm.
Had to rewatch a few bits because I got distracted. But it was really good. I cannot explain to you how excited I was, but also horrified when we started off on Dathomir and General Grievous was there and the droids were there. And I was like, it's Order 66 all over again. I was like, no, please.
Here's a question that I have. Do we know that it was Dathomir? Because we know that there are Night Sisters on other planets. And we did see General Grievous wipe out all the Night Sisters on Dathomir. But then there was no mention of there being like mountain clans or anything like that. And certainly this was like a whole other part of that battle. And maybe we just didn't see it. But is it possible this was a different group of Night Sisters?
Yes, but I felt pretty confident it was Dathomir. I mean, it had the look of the planet. From my perspective at least, it was just a different view of that fight, and like we just kind of like a different, like it just kind of there were so many Night Sisters. I think it just went to show that there's a big enough fight going on that like you don't even need to see Ventress or the other events that happened in the Clone Wars to see this little snippet. But it also could be that Dooku was so paranoid that he sent Grievous to destroy other Night Sister clans across the galaxy. That's totally a plausible thing.
I think it was Dathomir personally.
Yeah, I do too.
I mean, you could argue one way or the other, but I think the terrain was right, the weaponry was right, the facial markings were right. And but that could be more universal.
Come in. Okay, I love you. I'll talk to you about dinner. Feel free to start an order and I'll check it if you text me. Rebel scum. Anyway, I think you guys may well be right. I guess I'm kind of hoping that you're not, because to me, it feels like one more thing where we're inserting something that doesn't fit. Because not only did we hear when the Night Sisters were on Dathomir that the Night Sisters and the Night Brothers were really the only two groups there. We never heard mention of a mountain clan. But then since then, other people have returned and found it to be a totally dead world. And I mean, granted, I guess that they do return to wipe out, to attack that group and finish off the Night Sisters. But like, of all the people who have since gone to Dathomir, including, the characters in the Jedi video games, characters in later Clone Wars and in Rebels, why did they never find anything about the mountain clans?
I mean, I think that it's possible that it's just expanding a little bit more. I mean, we only ever visit the Night Brothers for a couple episodes in the Clone Wars, and then we visited briefly in on Dathomir in the Jedi Fallen Order game. But I think that like it's like the giant. I think this kind of comes down to that same idea that like I think we've discussed this before, but like Tatooine, there's like 3 settlements we always visit. It's like, but like in the Mandalorian brought us to one we'd only heard about in the past, haven't really seen it. So I feel like it's very plausible that there's the Night Sisters in this valley, the Night Brothers live in their little village, and there's a mountain clan. I mean, the planet's big enough to have 3 groups and one we just never heard of.
But no one ever went to Tatooine and said, "Oh, I'm glad we're in Mos Eisley because there's no one else here." Like, we specifically had people go to Dathomir and be like, "This planet is now completely dead. There's nobody here anymore."
When do they do that? Because there's a couple ways you could look at it. It could be, first of all, I see your point now. I've only ever seen Dathomir represented as like a big red ball. And like the mountain clan was obviously more of a gray terrain. So that is a little interesting bit. But I think the whole point of the mountain people was that they were supposed to be very hidden, and then they exposed themselves
Right.
to the separatists. And you could see it one of two ways. That thing happened, some of them died and they disappeared into the mountains. No one ever heard of them again. Or Grievous, heard somebody called him up, was like, hey, there's more bitches out here. And
Right.
Grievous was like, let's take them out. So I
That's
think it's
fair.
very
That's fair.
possible they just went on like the separatists. And like Alex brought up, Dooku's paranoia of there are more people on Dathomir. They're all witches. Kill them.
Yeah. I think that's very fair. I guess I just wish they had specifically said this is Dathomir or said it's a different planet, something like
Yeah.
that. That being said, I love the Morgan story so much. I'm guessing at least one of you caught it, maybe both of you, but when I realized that they had named the 3 episodes The Path of Fear, The Path of Anger, The Path of Hate, and in my mind, what I was hearing was Yoda saying, the path of the dark side, fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, hate leads to suffering. Like to me, that is just such a beautiful deep cut, and it was so perfect because Yoda is definitely showing exactly how someone falls like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I liked her story a lot too, because it's just so interesting to see people go through the rise and the fall of the Empire.
Mm-hmm.
It's just such interesting lore because we see her meet Thrawn and that connection is made. And the next time we see her is post-Empire. The New Republic's knocking on the door. And that's shortly before, I'm assuming that's shortly before we see Ahsoka for the first time and Morgan Elsbeth for the first time in the second season of The Mandalorian.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the Morgan story because of that same reason that, I liked seeing, these distinct periods of history. Like, it wasn't like, in the Tales of the Jedi, we were looking at, Dooku in this really small window of time. And like, it was all within a year, basically, not even a few months. And in this, we're spanning, decades. And that was a really interesting approach. I think that for me, while I really liked the Morgan Elsbeth story, it just was a little dwarfed when I was comparing it to the Barriss story because I've always had such an interest in Barriss Offrey as a character and like the Clone Wars and so like, getting to see her story continued and wrapped up really nicely, I think just got me more excited. Not to say that I didn't really enjoy the Morgan story, but I just really got pulled towards the Barriss story more because I already cared deeply about that character. While Morgan, my character was just, I hate this woman. Like I hope she dies because of all the all we saw in Ahsoka. So
I would kind of agree with that, just as a former Barriss hater, because here's the thing: before what happened to Ahsoka, she was my second favorite Jedi. I loved Barriss. I was obsessed with the episodes with Geonosia and the Brain Invader worms. I was obsessed with those episodes.
Same.
Of her and Barriss, and I just kept waiting, like, when are we going to see Barriss again? Like, I can't wait. And we'd see snippets of her here and there, maybe just walking in the background. And then we got her back, and I was like, yes! And that happened, and I was like, fuck you. And then I just was on fuck Barriss for a while, because when that came out, season 5 of the Clone Wars, I was still pretty young. Her arguments about the Jedi went straight over my head. Like, I didn't see her points because I was still basically a kid. And a sheltered kid at that. So I just was full on hate Barriss. She sucks. Why would she do this to Ahsoka? And since then, I've obviously changed my mind. I now see her arguments, and it's a much more interesting story. So I am so excited to go back to this character that I did have so much love for and be like, okay, like what aspects have changed or what aspects are still ringing true? And she always was this way.
That's fair. That's fair. And here I wonder if part of the difference, did you guys watch it all the way through in one
Yes.
sitting?
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah.
Okay. Because for me, first of all, I didn't know the second one was going to be Barriss. I managed to avoid all spoilers. But also, I watched the first one, and then Mary and I took a break. We made dinner, talked about it a lot, and then sat down to watch the Barriss one. So I think I got some more time to process. Like, I do think that the Barriss one, like, is probably the one I'm going to remember the more. But I think because I had more time to sit with Morgan without having seen Barriss yet, I was able to more really just be like, yeah, kind of appreciate the story on its own.
Absolutely.
And certainly, I think if we'd shown Barriss first, Morgan would have felt like a letdown.
Absolutely.
And it's interesting, Matthew, because I did watch the trailer. I'm a big trailer fiend, as has been known. But
Nothing wrong with that.
what was interesting was that the trailer very heavily made it seem like Barris was fully going down the dark path, and like this was the story of how Barris became an Inquisitor. And there's a lot of speculation online that, oh my God, this is going to prove that she is one of the Inquisitors that we've seen in other media. And it went the completely other way, to quote Obi-Wan Kenobi episode 2. But I think that it was, it was cool to like have seen the trailer and like get a little glimpse, but for them to have made me think one thing and get something completely different. Like I think that's when a trailer is successful, is when you see a bit, they didn't give very much away. But it made me like, I actually still felt surprised. It was like, oh wow, I did not see any of this coming.
Yeah, and that's really fair. And we'll talk about that when we get to Barris.
Yeah.
Just sticking with Morgan then a little bit more.
Yeah, sorry.
No, it's fine. It's fine. It was all kind of part of what we're discussing. Did you find yourself? I feel like now we understand a lot more why she goes the direction she does. And I generally like that. I like knowing that villains aren't just mwahaha power, that there's some reasoning behind what they do, even if I don't agree with it. But I'm wondering, did you find yourself having some sympathy for her, or did this change your perspective on her at all?
I mean, I absolutely will have sympathy for a child that watched their mother be killed and the rest of their people erased. Like, that's a horrific thing to go through. And it was so interesting to see how quickly it changed for her. Like, with Barris, it started as ideas. Sorry, not to compare, but like, for her, like, she had disagreements with the Jedi, then she said something, arrested, eventually became an Inquisitor. Morgan was like, this is my life, this is all I know and I love, and you've destroyed it. Hate.
Yeah.
Like, she turned really fast. And she did work down, like, path of fear, anger and hate. But she got to that anger real quick at the end of the first episode, and it was really, like, it was cool to see. It was interesting. And it struck very true for a Night Sister, to me, just based on what we know about them. And they are so clan-based, and they are so loyal to one another that, of course, she's not just going to go live with the mountain people and be safe. She's going to go get shit done.
Yeah. And I think that I agree with Erin in that, I feel the sympathy for her. I mean, like, watching your people die, having to fight General Grievous, or, in any capacity, like horrifying, traumatic. But, she did, like, very much like Ventress, walking that line. Like, the Night Sisters use magic. They're tapping into the Force in some capacity, some way, somehow. And, definitely embracing a level of the dark side. And I think that because, you're walking that line after this extremely traumatic time, she probably just fully gave herself over to that anger, that, that fear, that hatred. And, I understand, like, logically why it happened, but I can't say that, like, I agree with her choice to just, put now the Mountain Clan in danger and get more people killed because she couldn't just, accept help from some people. I don't know. So I feel for her, disagree with her choices.
Yeah. And I think, especially at that age, I can understand why she did what she did. But also, I don't ever want to see an adult kick out a child of a place of safety. But I felt a lot of sympathy for the clan leader, because she knew she was taking a risk, and then this woman, the girl, got her daughter literally killed, and put her entire group in danger. And to me, it's the perfect kind of a story, because I couldn't point to, I could point to the Separatists as the enemy, but I couldn't point to anyone and be like, oh, this clan person is so terrible, or, oh, Morgan is being so horribly selfish. Like, everyone was doing what, from their perspective, I think would make sense to do.
Yeah.
And I think I was at least a little bit worried that Morgan was going to then be a lot more benevolent, that when her plans originally for the TIE Defender to help her planet were going to get rejected, that she'd become this great champion for them. And so seeing her be like, no, I'm just going to be a dictator and a ruler, and I'm going to claim I'm doing this for you all. To me, that felt the perfect direction for her to go.
Yeah. I also want to point out, sorry, you go ahead, Erin.
I was just going to say something on how you were saying kind of walking the line between magics and the dark side. And to
Mhm.
me, it makes perfect sense because all she has left of her people is the teachings. And
Yeah.
those are rooted in the dark side. So she's just going to dive into what she knows, which is the dark side. So I agree with you, Matthew. It makes perfect sense that she's not caught up on doing anything for her own. She's just falling right into a place of power.
Yeah. And I kind of get the sense that, the Sith originally see the Night Sisters as like pretenders to the dark side, that they're afraid to fully embrace it. I think if a Sith encountered Morgan by the end of this story, they'd be like, "Yep, you'd make a good apprentice. You fully get the dark side. She's
Mhm.
gone past any of that."
Yeah.
All I was going to say was I wanted to just, before we kind of moved on to Morgan's story, I wanted to just take a moment that it was really cool, as a big Clone Wars fan, to see General Grievous, recreated. We saw a brief moment in the final season of the Clone Wars of him just in his little escape pod from the Invisible Hand, but seeing him in action, fighting, seeing, I know it's always painful. For some reason, they only ever seem to give us like reanimations of really painful, emotional scenes, but seeing Grievous like that and seeing that animation was just really cool. Not to say that it wasn't great when it first came out, like 10, 15 years ago, probably longer actually, dear God. But
No. It's the Bad Batch effect, though.
it is.
Like it
was
came
just
back,
cool.
same animation, so much better.
It was just cool to see Grievous again, and also in Morgan's story, just for the briefest moment, to hear Thrawn's sweet, sweet voice.
Oh, that's so good.
I love that voice. He might be my favorite voice in all of Star Wars.
Wow.
I think so, and it's why I'm so glad they're just like, we're never going to do Thrawn in any setting without Lars Mikkelsen.
Yep.
And the droids were scary. Like, you
Yeah.
guys have heard me say that one thing I don't like about the prequels and about the Clone Wars is that all the Roger nonsense, like, I was never worried about the droids. And in this, they're terrifying. Just like they did in Mando, and it's in part because they never say Roger. And I loved all of it.
Yeah, because commandos are tough shit. Like, I was scared of those guys when I was a kid.
Yeah.
When they whip out the knife, absolutely not.
You said absolutely not.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so funny.
It's been a while since I watched the episode of the original, it's been a while since I watched the episode of Mandalorian where Ahsoka first shows up and we first meet Morgan and see the planet that she's controlling. Maybe it's that I forgot, but there's a guy in this, the kind of guy who's kind of the chief representative that he's trying to like argue for her, and fight against her, but he keeps getting put back in his place. Kind of like a middle-aged, kind of, roundish face fellow. I didn't remember him from that episode, but do either of you remember? Was he in that live action episode? Because it seemed like they were making a big deal of him.
Ooh, good question.
I think so. I
Okay.
don't know for sure.
I'm pretty sure he was.
Okay.
Because there was like one man who was very distinctly kind of the leader of the oppressed people. He was the only one who would come out and actually like talk to the Mandalorian when everyone else just shuttered their doors.
Right.
I believe it's that person. I believe it's the same guy.
That sounds right. It's just one more way that they're doing such a good job of integrating live action and animation and all these different stories from all these different places, and I'm so all about it.
Yeah, and I was just gonna say that I feel like they're also doing a really good job of integrating her. Like we meet her in the context of she knows Thrawn. Why does Thrawn care about her? Why was she so loyal to him? And we now see that like Thrawn's pet project, his beloved TIE Defender project, was actually Morgan's idea, which I don't know. I'm curious what you both think. Does it diminish it at all that it wasn't Thrawn's idea? Like, because in Rebels, we see him obsessed with this. He's like, my TIE Defender project. I should have the funding. Screw the Death Star. Like,
in my opinion, it's the Tarkin effect. He didn't think of the Death Star, but that was his space station.
Well, I think you're right, but I also think I want to give Thrawn a little more credit in that I think Tarkin was very good at like waiting till something proved successful and then jumping on board. I think, and to me, this is something that they've established about Thrawn from the beginning. He recognizes his own limitations. He's not a technical expert. He's not these other things, but he's very good at finding those people. He's very good at, and this goes all the way back to the original books when one of his like, flunkies like fails to stop the I think it's Luke Skywalker's X-wing, but tries an ingenious new idea with a tractor beam to stop him.
Mhm.
And Thrawn's like, cool, you had a good idea. I want more people like you. I'm promoting you, even though your idea didn't work.
Mhm.
So yeah, to me it fit that like I don't think I ever thought that he was like sitting down and like designing a starfighter. I think that it was
Yeah.
more that he understood that having just swarms of TIE fighters that were meant to be killed blown up, it's terrible for morale. It's not good fighting. That if you have a ship that's a real equal to the X-wing, that we need that a lot more than a single Death Star.
Yeah.
Makes
Matthew,
sense.
your mic's a little crackly here and there.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
I don't know if it's. I can't find a pattern, unfortunately.
Okay, let me know when next time it happens. Last thing then that I want to ask about it. Oh, never mind. I'm going to say it again. The last thing I'll say about it, and I think are the last things you want to add, as again a lover of the original Thrawn, I love all iterations of Thrawn, but someone who started with Thrawn with the original Heir to the Empire books, I love seeing Captain Pelion and getting to see him like actually do something, not just be like the Watson to the Holmes of Thrawn.
Mm-hmm.
You guys want to know something embarrassing about that? I
You
thought that was
forgot who Pelion
Admiral.
was?
No, I thought that was. First of all, I never knew who it was. Unfortunately, I thought it was Admiral Euloran.
I did too at first when I first
I thought
saw
it was
him.
him.
When I
was
first
so
saw
excited.
him, and then it like after a minute, it's like, oh no, wait, no, it's not.
Yeah.
But when he first came up, I think it like I'm sure many fans and Clone Wars fans thought that as well originally.
Mhm.
And I think we were meant to think that. I think that was
Yeah.
a little bit of a fake out because I thought
Yeah.
it too at first. I was like, I hope that's Pelion, but I
Right.
think that might be Yularen. Oh, good, it's not Yularen.
That was my thought at first was like, oh, Pelion. I was like, oh no, it's 100% you are. And I was like, wait, no. No. It was like a back and forth.
Yeah.
And also my boy Rook was in the house. Oh boy, Rook was in the house. Who, R.I.P. My boy Zeb killed him in Rebels. But like it was cool to see him like at the peak of his action here.
I did love that. When I heard like something skittering around, I was like, Rook.
Yeah, dude.
And then his gross little creature, he went, and I was like,
He looks like a baby Rancor.
I love it. I loved it.
Oh, it was awesome. Yeah, and the battle was really cool. And it was also cool to see like again just a glimpse of like for those maybe who don't read the New Republic or how many New Republic books are there? Like New Republic, not High Republic. Are there any?
I don't know.
I don't know exactly what you. Oh, like books about like
the New
life.
Republic.
I think there's at least like a dozen or so.
Okay, so there's a bunch. But for those who haven't read them or anything, like these are one of our like we get little glimpses in the Mandalorian, and this is just another little glimpse for us of how the New Republic is functioning. Like going to star systems, like offering clemency, basically. Like we're not trying to be vindictive. As long as you leave, we will not arrest you.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was just really interesting. Like to see how throughout these different shows, we're getting little pieces of the New Republic and how they function. It was cool. It was cool for me to see that in the third episode of the Morgan story.
Yeah,
especially because. Oh, sorry, Erin, you go ahead.
I was going to change the subject, so go ahead.
Okay. Especially because I thought the New Republic in that were kind of punks.
Mm-hmm.
Like, first of all, they just clearly are completely outmatched. They have no idea what they're doing. They got wiped out pretty quick and should have had a much stronger force if this is what they want to do. But also they come out saying, look, we know you're an independent system. We are offering you a chance to join our New Republic, which feels very like we're not being colonialist. We're not forcing everyone to be part of our thing like the Empire did. We're giving you the chance. But then they're like, oh, but by the way, we're claiming jurisdiction and demanding that you change your leader, which like, yeah, good thing to do. But it also was like, oh, this is why people don't trust the New Republic, because this is completely like, some shady shit that they're doing. Like don't come out and be like, we want to invite you to join us. By the way, we already are holding you to our laws and we're going to get to decide who's your ruler. And like, it's a good decision, but it felt very underhanded and very like, I get why people would not trust this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like it's very much something that the Empire would do, just in a much more aggressive way.
Yeah.
Or even sneaky sometimes. The Empire can look really nice at first.
And I think that like there's been complaints we've seen in shows that the New Republic is really just the Empire like reskinned. And because I mean, do you think about to the average, not to get into a very deep conversation about this, but to the average person in the galaxy, the Republic, the Empire, the New Republic, it's all just different names and different faces. And for most of the galaxy, I think they feel oppressed, or they see them as one monolithic thing. And so like seeing the New Republic act that way is interesting because it kind of gives a little bit of credence to that belief.
Yeah.
I think it's true. And I think you're right. I think that's been a very interesting story, is the story of like, because in general, like groups that take over after imperial empires or after any kind of oppressive regime, it's really hard for them to be like, we're not like them, but of course we want to establish order,
Yeah.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah.
Anything else on this story? Or are we ready to move on to
My final
Madame?
comments, I really just loved the Night Sister weaponry. Those cool, like scythe-looking things. Whoa! So cool. And I think Morgan even continued to use something similar to that until she switched to her pike. Is that right?
Yeah,
I
I
think
think
so,
so.
yeah.
She had it when she fought Rook. She had the two.
Yeah, the two
Maybe?
sides.
I don't quite remember. But I just love to see new stuff, and especially with the Night Sisters and the way that all of their weaponry is so steeped in magic.
Mhm.
And we saw her mother doing a sort of a chant to bring power or do something related to the blades, and they kind of glowed, and then she went off. And
Right.
yeah.
Well,
Just
that
love to
actually
see it.
brings me to another question, because we did see that the Mountain Clan obviously has incredible force power as well. Do you think they were supposed to be like closer to the Bendu or closer to light side, or are they also dark side?
My initial guess would be more like the Bendu,
Mm-hmm.
but it could just be similar to the Night Sisters, how it's like a toe in the dark side. It could be a toe in the light side.
Yeah, you could see
I
that.
mean, as far as just the way the um leader acted towards Morgan, I mean, kind of shows that they do tend to lean maybe a little more light side. That being said, anybody can have compassion. And I think that that's what this story is really like, that's what these are telling us about.
Mm-hmm.
Is maybe
Yeah.
all the people in the story are the dark side, but there's depth to them. There's still interesting things happening within the characters.
Yeah.
100%. All right, let's talk now about Madame Ophi.
Baddie.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Really
That was
brought her-
crazy. Okay, first of all, a little triggering almost to me seeing her immediately in the same prison getup that we see the undead Luminara and Dooley in Rebels.
Oh, I didn't make the connection, but
Mhm.
you're so
Threw
right.
me off. It threw me off because it's exactly the same with the head covering. Because
Yeah.
also, why do they have head coverings? We know Barris has hair. We have no idea what's underneath Luminara's hat or headdress. So I just assumed like maybe that's why she had the little thing. But apparently they just put everyone in skull caps.
Yeah, I also thought the same thing. But I just, again, I was expecting something so different this story. And it was so
Yeah.
cool. I mean, it was so cool like I was mad at her for a long time as well. I mean, like
Mad.
I was mad at her. I was less mad that she left the order because she made some damn good points. More mad that she framed Ahsoka and her actions led to Ahsoka leaving the order, which contributed to Anakin's fall to the dark side. I mean, she like really was a massive. I know there's a lot going on there, but she really was one of the dominoes that led to Anakin's fall, which is fascinating to me and has always made her very interesting to me.
And this is so interesting because I was Team Offie the entire time, and I loved that she did that. And first of all, because again, I completely agreed with her.
I'm sorry, you love that she bombed the temple
And framed Ahsoka?
and killed people?
Clones?
The framing of Ahsoka, I'm not on board with, and I'm not on board with the. Trying not to get into a much larger discussion of like terrorist versus freedom fighter versus what like. I think that her message was 100% true. I think the means by which she expressed that message were wrong.
Fair.
But I also as I feel with other people who sometimes turn to violence to express a message that no one is hearing until people turn to violence, have some sympathy for her position. And I think even more so in a meta way, for me, it was very important that at some point during the clone, like I was getting all these subtle hints in the Clone Wars that the writers understood that the Jedi screwed up and that, this wasn't all just Palpatine being wahaha, that like the failure of the Jedi was because of their own internal problems largely. And then Palpatine being able to like completely exploit those, manipulate those, etc. Blame isn't zero sum. And so to have a character, and like, I remember being so excited by the Pong Krell arc and then so disappointed by the last episode of it because I mean, it's horrifying to watch, but to me, the idea that someone honestly had gotten to the point where he had to so deaden his compassion in order to be a general that he just was like ordering these people to their deaths because that's what he thought was needed, and he lost all sense of compassion that Jedi are supposed to have. To me, that's an amazing story. Having him just be like, again, mwahaha, dark side, boring. I don't care. And so for her to clearly be not working for Palpatine, not influenced by Dooku in any way, doing this on her own, I was like, fuck yeah, this is the kind of story we needed. And I think I probably was not as invested in her story before that. So I think it's just all different reasons why I had that different reaction.
Yeah. And I mean, you were adult when you watched all of the Clone Wars, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like that's why it's so fun to have this podcast, because you really can't fathom or imagine what things would be like through a child's eyes.
Yeah.
And here I am, a child, to share how
You
I
are an
see things with
adult,
my
but
eyes.
yes, we are different generations, and it's exactly why we call this podcast what we do.
Yeah.
Alex just looks stunned by everything I just said.
Yeah, go ahead, Erin.
Can I say a thing about Pong Krell, or are we going to leave that?
Go for it.
That's where my brain's at right now. You go ahead.
That's where we're stuck. To me, I understand your point, Matthew. The fact that he was just like, I want to be the new apprentice. Not a great story, but the way he was not doing what he thought needed to happen. He was doing it for fun. He was so drunk on power, and he was so power hungry just to make these people bend to his will. Rex and Fives gave him a hard time. So what did he do? He hit them the hardest. He wanted those motherfuckers dead. Like, just because they looked at him wrong. And because he thought he had the power to control those lives. He thought those lives meant nothing, which is a theme all throughout the Clone Wars. And so to me, it's not even about, there is definitely a deadening of compassion through being forced to be a general, but it's also this obsession with power, which is very dark side and could make him be it. Yeah. If they had done something like that without the full muhaha, I want to be Sidious's apprentice type of a thing. And it just, he did go towards the dark side because he was hungry with power and he was angry about how the war was going. That is a very interesting story. And that's how I always kind of saw it, or liked to see it.
And,
Yeah.
And just to respond to that, and then Alex, please jump in.
Oh, yeah.
I'm totally with you on all that. And I think part of it is that part of why I think to me that fits he's the general who's gone bad story is that what you were talking about there about like becoming very hungry with power, but in your mind, it's not that you love the power. It's that you think you're the only one who can win this damn war. And that you will start like torturing the people who question your authority because in your mind, again, they're helping you to lose the war. Actual generals do that all the time. Like that is something we've seen in history on numerous occasions. So yeah, to me, like, yeah, I was 100%, I think a thing of like Pong Krell is on the dark side by the end of this, but to me, his fall should have been much more natural and much more not as intentional.
No, that makes sense. I guess I'm not as knowledgeable about war history, so that's interesting. And it makes total sense. It's just something that I haven't come across or thought of.
And I mean, I just think that like your point, your point's totally valid, Matthew. I just think that like there was an extra sickness in like dressing up his own clones against each other, and like I mean, it was dark what he did. What that was fucked up, and I feel like I don't know This is why I really think we need to do an episode at some point in our. We have such a backlog, I know, but eventually on some Clone Wars arcs, including the Pong Krell arc, because this is a whole conversation. But just to reel it back for a minute, you know, I think that I agree. Like I said earlier, I agree with everything Barriss Offrey said. The Jedi become murderers. They become pawns of the Senate. Like all of that, very on point, honestly. And like, then a big reason, why I dislike the Jedi at this point in history. But bombing civilians and clones, and just I don't know, using feeding someone mini bombs of what it's just, again,
That's dark.
dark stuff. Like, I get like using violence to get attention, but Jesus Christ.
I
And
guess.
so
Oh, sorry. Continue.
I was just saying, I feel like there was a way to get your point across without being that, like, like I don't know, like you don't have to freaking bomb the Jedi Temple. Like the Jedi have lost their way, absolutely. Do they just do like But like they didn't even kill Jedi. Like they killed clones and civilians and people who like they're part of the machine. I get that, but like I don't know. It's very much like and this is a larger conversation. It's very much like when you bomb in war, you don't bomb actual military combatants. You're bombing like people who are kind of on the helping on the back line. And
Right.
I don't know. It comes down to mortals in war, and I get that they're iffy, but I always hated her more for the atrocity and the fact that she after all of that, framed Ahsoka of all people for it.
Choose someone
Like,
else. Literally.
Yeah, right. Choose someone
Anyone
else.
I 100% hear what you're saying, and I think in the story, I 100% agree. None of what she did is in any way justified. But I think, and this might be because like I didn't see it as a kid, or it might just be that I was way too cynical when I was watching it. I didn't blame her. I blamed the writers, because there's a thing that writers do, and I think Killmonger and Magneto are the two best examples of this. But there's a lot of others where they introduce a character who has, I think, fairly good points that are critical of our heroes. But then in order to make them the villain that our hero can fight against, they have them use methods that are so over the top and so clearly wrong that we can't support them. And I think in some versions of Magneto, they do it really well. I think Killmonger, they were kind of on the line, and I wish they hadn't gone quite so far. I think in something like Falcon and Winter Soldier, they went way too far. I think I kind of looked at like with Barriss. I was like, okay, I get it. You're doing the stupid writer cliche where you're showing me just how terrible she is so that I will think she's wrong. And so I kind of just wrote it all off. I was like, I just don't care, because that feels just like bad writing to me. And again, I think because again, it's a kid, like it is a show that everyone can enjoy, but it's supposed to be a kid's show. And so it may well be that I was just bringing too much of a cynical attitude to it. But I think maybe that's like, as you were saying all that, I was like, oh yeah, I completely forgot about all that. Because it just kind of rolled off me, I think, because it felt frustrating to me. And I think that's the same, just to go back to the Pong Krell thing, because I think the two conversations are connected. It's about the time where he starts like, the idea that he would be careless enough that he would accidentally cause the two of them to fight each other and not be bothered by it felt very believable. Once I learned that he did that intentionally, yeah, that's when I kind of like checked out. And I was like, okay, this is like having a villain kill one of their own lackeys just to show how evil they are. I get it. You're not a very good writer. You like, that's kind of where my brain goes with both of those situations.
There's some more crackling.
Okay. I will have to figure that out. I'm sorry. Alex, are you also hearing it?
I am.
Okay. To our
Maybe
listeners.
just
Go ahead.
I was just saying maybe scoot out from the mic a touch.
Yeah. Okay. Is this better?
We can try that for a little bit, because it sounds like it might just be like airflow is making it like.
Okay.
Oh,
Does
good
that
point.
make sense? So it's like when you go like p or b, like things like that.
Okay. And this thing's supposed to protect it, but I guess it's not doing that. So, all right. Well, anyway, I had my rant. You can go ahead and respond.
I blanked. Oh, so that's what if I can kind of bring us back in here for a minute. What I really diving into Barriss' story outside of her ethics, whether we agree with her or not, we see her in this prison cell, and she's given a chance. Basically, she's first. She sees the temple being bombed. We're seeing Order 66 anyway. And we see a former Jedi walk in and offer her like, she's like, what does the council want? She's like, no more council. All that's done. Like, come with me. And it was cool also because we got to see the beginning of I'm gonna say it wrong. Is it Tower Inquisitorius? like what is the base
Victorious.
castle? Thank you. And seeing the beginnings of being built, seeing the Grand Inquisitor, like in Rebels, we kind of just introduced to him, thrown in the middle. Seeing him kind of early on was cool, and the training we actually see like what it takes to be an Inquisitor, and it's giving off that kind of classic. I don't know, I'm not sure where it originated, but what I think of is in Naruto, like there's a village that their final test is you have to kill your classmate, basically. That's how the Blood Mist village used to operate. And I was like, wow, same thing here. Like you get to the end, you have to kill your friend to join the ranks. And you saw she did it, but was never fully committed to it. And it was just cool to see the inner workings of all that. And then like she's given the opportunity to join. You see other Inquisitors we've seen in other pieces of media standing there. And of course, the brief moment of Vader walking in and giving himself a little throne it was just very cool. I think all of that like little sequence to see the inner workings of the Inquisitors, to see how Jedi were actually like turned and given this opportunity, and like a lot of them thought that this was just the best chance they had for both survival and a place in this new order, a chance to turn their anger into something. I don't know. That whole episode was very cool to me, and like just seeing all of that. That was just the first episode.
Yeah, they did Vader perfectly. Like we've talked about this before. It's like I don't really need more about Vader, like as in corny lines, or well, as much as I do love the corny lines, to be honest, but I can see how that frustrates people. And it's like just to keep his menace, we need to keep it simple. And just the breathing and the walking and the sitting, and he just looks at them. And then the Grand Inquisitor. Rise, Inquisitors. Oh my god. He's got a great voice too.
He really does. And I thought, all of it was so well done, down to that fight scene and the way that like Barriss clearly doesn't want to start the fight, but is very happy to finish it.
Yeah. Very happy to finish it.
She fell.
Yeah.
And then we see all that, and then we see her on her first mission. Dude, just I pause as Erin, you're better with names than I am. What is the name of the Jedi? Thank you, Lynn. Lynn brutally murdering that village. I mean, and like she leaves the child as like thanks kid, you gave us the tip, I'll let you live, but kill everyone you love. Very like twisted sense of justice. But seeing her do that, and what Barriss just watching in horror, trying to protect this little kid, and Barriss very much still acting like a Jedi, because I think it goes to show that like what Barriss did in the Clone Wars fucked up, but she was never like a Sith. She was never evil. Her eyes never turned that orange. Like, she always still had her morals. I mean, she was a student of Master Unduli, who was very disciplined. And it was cool to see her like using kind of her Jedi training to talk to this kid and, try and get information and protect. And then just seeing how brutal the Inquisitor. So that's a former Jedi. And just sitting there thinking that like former Jedi could fall that far. Like every time I see an Inquisitor go crazy, it's just,
yeah, they did that so well, of just like the classic shot of seeing Barriss, and then through the foreground, Lynn is just starting back and forth, just murdering people, and they're slashing and they're screaming. And it was just so well done. And Barriss was so perfectly horrified. But like,
It really was.
Yeah, just in realizing what she actually got herself into, because she did truly believe that like maybe this was okay. Like she did truly, when she was talking to that kid, she truly believed the Empire was there to help, and they just wanted to know things.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then like, she goes up to the mountain and they're fighting, and I actually appreciated, but it wasn't a Jedi we knew. It was just like, because that wasn't the point. It would have been distracting if it was a Jedi we knew, I think. It's just having this unknown Jedi who was just hungry, tired, lost. And it was cool to see that like she was, and that the Jedi admits, I'm hungry, I'm weak, I'm tired, I want to give up, I hate everything, but I won't. Like, that's like, to me, that's like the Jedi spirit, that like the heart, you strip away all of like the bad things they become. And that's what a Jedi is supposed to be, like you endure, you overcome. Like that is how and Matthew, you can probably speak to this more, but like how I would picture like Obi-Wan and Yoda's descriptions in the original films. Like they've endured, they overcame the lack of hope and still stayed true to their morals.
Yeah. I think that's very, very true. And I think the whole thing was very well done. And to be honest, to the point where one of my first thoughts was, why wasn't this in Tales of the Jedi? Because it isn't really about the Empire, it's about the Inquisitors, and it's about the fact that she dies a Jedi.
Mhm.
And after thinking about it more, I think that if you had called it Tales of the Dark Tale, if she had been in Tales of the Jedi, I think we would have expected her to turn back at the end.
Mhm.
So I think that's fair. I think though that I wish this had been called Tales of the Dark Side,
Mhm.
because
Yeah.
for me, when you tell me Tales of the Empire, I want to know about the TIE fighter pilot who felt, watched Alderaan be destroyed and wonders if they should stay in the Empire. I want to hear more about some of the Imperial folks that we've seen, and some of them who choose to desert, and some who don't. So I think like that was kind of my overall frustration with the Barris story, a little bit with
Mhm.
Morgan's story as well. But I think other than that, it was just so well done.
I mean, I think that
Yeah.
like I agree with your point, but I don't think any one name kind of uniformly fits them because like the dark side, I mean, like Morgan, yes, but also like people would argue like, is she fully in the dark side? Like, how do you define the dark side? Like, it's also telling the story like Thrawn and all of them. Like, if you just say the dark side is everything the Empire encompasses, like, and I feel like
Mhm.
I don't know. It feels like there's nothing that really links them. So I think they might have just picked Empire for a time period, but it also doesn't make sense because Morgan's story also takes place like,
It spans so
yeah,
much.
it spans
Yeah,
beyond the Empire.
yeah.
Mhm.
No, it's very true.
So
It's very true.
I don't know.
I kind
It's valid.
My thoughts kind of because in Tales of the Jedi, we saw two very well-known characters, Count Dooku, or, Jedi Master Dooku, and Ahsoka. And so I almost wonder, because Tales of the Jedi was a very maybe thing.
Mhm.
When it came out, it was very much supposed to be a standalone thing.
It's
If
awesome.
I'm not wrong, I think that they're talking about a second season.
I hope so.
That's what I've heard. And so I
Agreed.
wonder if with Tales of the Empire, they have to do kind of the same idea of we need to pick key characters that people will be interested in and really that are topical and that people are really going to want to know about so that they'll watch this first season and then they'll watch a second one when we
That's
do
fair.
come out with less exciting characters, exciting in quotes because it's characters you don't know.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my hope headcanon.
I think that's fair. And I think I'm even being silly because I'm one of the people who's like, who cares that part of the book of Boba Fett is the Mandalorian story? It's all part of the same universe. It all connects.
Mhm.
It's all part of the same timeline. I'm fine with it. So I think you're right. There's
Um,
one. Go ahead.
oh, I was just gonna. If you have something to say about this episode, I was just gonna bring up the final episode of the whole thing.
You go. You do that first.
Okay. Final episode, we see Barris. Well, we don't see Barris at first. And we were like, well, the end of the second episode, she maybe killed Lynn. We don't know. She threw her off a cliff, was trying to carry this Jedi away. And then we see that like this family is in search of help. And it's so cool to me that like Barris, is like this mother, this healer. She's taken this place. I
Mhm.
mean, if you her
Yeah.
look gave off like Ahsoka the White, Ahsoka the Gray vibes, like very like mirroring images of her friend from the temple. And um it was cool to see Barris like kind of found her own little role and had been at peace and was like, my life doesn't matter. Like I'm gonna protect people, I'm gonna help people, like and even like sacrifice herself to help bring Lynn back. And I'm like very firmly believe that like Lynn is done with the dark side after that experience. And like it
Mhm.
sucks that Barris had to die. And like to be fair, we have seen people survive lightsaber wounds. Like we don't know 100% that Barris is dead, but I think that it would be diminishing if she came back to life later. I think that her
Yeah.
sacrifice to bring Lynn back was the crux of that. And I don't want to see any Disney crap where they like bring her back for whatever reason. Like that
Mhm.
death was powerful. It was meaningful. It wrapped up Barris' story. Barris was a story of tragedy in a way, and it wrapped it up really beautifully. Um, and it was cool to see her like use her death to help bring life, quote unquote, back to this lost soul in Lynn.
So I think I totally agree with you. I do not want her to come back. I don't want anything else in the future of her story.
Right, correct.
There's one chapter of her story, though. We don't know it's a chapter, but I want it to be. that I would be very okay if they showed us, and I feel like you could do it in a way that didn't feel like it had the like squeezing something in that wasn't there before prequel problem. One of the things I loved about Barriss and her relationship with Ahsoka, and they never really lampshaded this, but I think they made it clear, is that part of what made them so different, but also let them build a friendship around those differences, is that one of them had a complete devil may care, who cares what the council says, I'm going to do whatever I think is right for you, Ahsoka, and I'm going to teach you the same thing kind of master. And the other had in Luminara the most like by the book, you have to do things exactly right, you have to follow the rule exactly. And I always wanted them to have some kind of not reconciliation, but like to come to terms with each other after their masters had done what they had done, and with Luminar dying so horribly and Anakin falling. And I would have loved, I don't think it belonged here because I think it would have overshadowed the story.
Mm-hmm.
But I would love it if in some other story, Inquisitor Barriss and Jedi-less trying to find her way, Ahsoka meet.
That'd
And
be
they
Mhm.
wild.
probably fight and they probably talk and Barriss is probably like, yeah, look, Ahsoka's trying to be like, how could you do this? And Barriss is like, well, look what happened to your master, and that like that kind of back and forth. And well, I mean, at this point, I don't think Barriss knows that, but like
Yeah.
some way of some way of that connection happening, because I do think like they hinted that story so well and they never really put a bow on it in the way they wish they had. And so
Mm-hmm.
And it's
I would say that's the only thing, Alex, is that like I would love to have that part of the story added, but you're
yeah,
right. I never want Barriss to come back.
and there's actually a natural point for that. I feel like because based on the flow of that story and the way that Lynn was talking, it made it seem like she'd been looking for Barriss for a while and they had given up, and she finds Barriss at this point when she's no longer looking. That gap between the second and third episode of her story could be years, and like it would make perfect sense for like Barriss and Ahsoka to have met, especially if Barriss is somehow linked into like the path or some other just like helping. Like Ahsoka finding
Yeah.
her in that moment would make sense.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I think I want it to be while Barriss is still technically Inquisitor, but while she's like, that the conversation with Ahsoka is part of what pushes her away. But
Mm.
yeah, you can do it either way. All right, so we've gone on for a while. We're gonna have a little bit of bonus content, talking about feedback for the Bad Batch, but let's kind of give some final comments and wrap ups on it. Erin?
Yeah, I really loved seeing Barriss in that third episode in like the healer, the mother, kind of a thing, because in Barriss and Luminar's relationship, there's a lot of talk. People have a lot of different opinions. I've heard a lot, like an overwhelming amount of people saying Luminara was so by the book she was cold to Barriss and she didn't treat her with sympathy and she wasn't there for her in the way that Barriss needed growing up. And like just all these very sad artworks of like Barriss just wanting a hug, like just crying. And of course now like masters don't hug their Padawans, but just this idea that Luminara had something to do with her fall. And I've never loved that picture because I really love Luminara unduly. She is the calmest, like to be strapped up in front of the Geonosian Queen, about to be filled with worms, and you're like joke flirting with Obi-Wan, like my girl's got some cool. She's just, and she is such a caring presence. She is so compassionate to her clones and the people around her that this version of Barriss is exactly what I imagined Luminara would raise.
Mm.
And I just loved to see that as true, because the Barriss that we were last left with, I'm just like, I mean, clearly something went wrong. Like, is Luminara to blame? Is she not? And I mean, it seems from everything we've learned about Barriss, it has nothing to do with the way she was raised. It has everything to do with the entire order. It's
Mhm.
not about her master or what she was taught. I mean, otherwise she would have tried to kill Luminara if that was the problem, but it wasn't for her.
I think I'd push back on that a little bit. Not in that, like, I think Luminara is the problem or Luminara was horrible, but I do think that those who are raised in stricter, very rules-based environments are often the ones who push back. They may be like the ones who demand the most out of the institution because they think they've followed all the rules. Why aren't things working? Or I was always told the institution would be exactly this. It's the student who has followed every rule, and now the substitute teacher comes along and isn't rewarding that student. Or they're just seeing that there's chaos. And every ex-evangelical can tell you a story like this, and some ex-evangelicals break pretty bad, and a lot do break in much better ways, but still may have some story about going a little crazy for a while, when they realize that, oh yeah, all these very strict rules, actually that's not what has to happen. So
Mhm.
I do think that very strict upbringing helps to explain why Barris would be the one to kind of break like this. But yeah, I don't think that means that Luminara was bad or wrong. I just think
Yeah.
something got lost along the way in that teaching process.
I think I would agree with that because Barris was brought up to be the perfect Jedi, and she probably felt, I have done everything to be the perfect Jedi. Why do I feel so shitty as a commander? Why do I feel so crappy as a general?
And
So
why
I
are
think
these
you're
other
absolutely
people
right.
getting rewarded for not being the perfect Jedi?
Exactly. To me, the part that felt wrong is just people saying that Luminar was cold. Which, I mean, I guess the first time we see them and they think the Padawans are dead, and Luminar is like, what happens, happens. And Anakin's like, dig them out! That did feel a little bit cold, but we had to have her be a little nonchalant to, just expedite Anakin's drama.
Right. That's fair.
My last two thoughts were just one. I did think of one other interaction I would have liked to see. And it's potentially like a very brief visit with Luminara in prison, like just what that interaction might look like.
That would be
Is she's
wild.
even alive at this point? I don't know. It'd be interesting to me.
Hmm.
I want to say that overall, I really enjoyed Tales of the Empire. I really like the stories. My only thing is comparing everything. Like, I think I like Tales of the Jedi a little bit more. And I don't know if it's just that I have a very deep interest in Dooku's story and Ahsoka's story, so it might just be like a personal attachment. But they felt like, stories that kind of filled information I actively wanted to know about. Like, I never really thought oh, I want to know a lot more about Morgan Elsbeth. Like, it's cool that I know more about her now, and I'm happy I do.
Mhm.
Same with Barris, but if I had never gotten this show, I wouldn't have ever really thought about it. Though I would have kept thinking I want more Dooku, I want more Ahsoka's past. So it's just different for me. Still really enjoyed it. Still thought it was really well done. I think I just personally enjoyed Tales of the Jedi a bit more.
I think that's really fair, and I don't think either one of us is right or wrong. I have the exact opposite reaction for kind of similar reasons, because I do really love Dooku's story, and I do really love Ahsoka's story, and they'd already been told. And this version, Tales of the Jedi, kind of undid that. And granted, Dooku's story was told primarily through um, Darth Sidious, a book that is now, sorry, not Darth Plagueis, a book that is now not considered canon. And so I
Mhm.
understand that. But to me, one of the most fundamental parts of that story, which really helps to fix the problem that I don't like so much about Attack of the Clones, is that it gave the idea that Dooku was already thinking a lot about the dark side long before he met Palpatine, and that it's the death of Qui-Gon that is one of the things that really pushes him over the edge, and that Emperor Chancellor Palpatine and then Emperor Palpatine is helping to push him along in this great, very manipulative way. And so the way they changed it, I was just kind of disappointed. And then especially with the Ahsoka story, which we do have a canon Disney novel, which they decided to throw out. Um, I think I want to go back and watch them and just kind of start to accept them as new stories instead of being like, wait, no, but that's not how it's supposed to work. Um, but yeah, I think for me, so I just think it's two different perspectives. I really
Mhm.
like this, I think, a lot more than Tales of the Jedi, because there was no other version of the story for it to contradict.
That's a great point. Yeah, because these stories are widely untold.
Mhm.
They're very much supporting characters.
Very much so. Very much.
Did you have, just real quick? Did you have a preference, Aaron, or you pretty much love them the same?
I don't know. I'm easy. You know this. I just enjoy media. Like I
Fair enough.
I loved it. It's been a while since I watched Tales of the Jedi, so I'm not gonna try to make a direct comparison. But I thoroughly enjoyed both.
Yeah.
And I think that's awesome. I think it is, and I think I am guilty of this, way too easy to fall into the find the faults, critique everything. And I just love joy, and I love being reminded of that. There
Mhm.
was a moment in this where Mary, my partner, who's not as into these stories as I am, was just like, I can't believe I'm noticing the way they animated sand, but the way they animated sand at one point in Morgan's story
Mhm.
was so good. And I was like, yeah, like this animation is just next gen, and I love it.
Mhm.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for being a part of this. To our listeners, thank you so much. Of course, one of the best ways to support this podcast is to become a member. $5 a month, $55 a year. You get extra credit. You get bonus content at the end of every episode. Today, we're going to talk about like what's the next Tales of that we'd want to see. You get full bonus episodes, and of course, you're supporting the podcasts and helping us keep the lights on, helping us, get me better and better mic equipment, so I stop having the sound problems I'm having. I apologize for that, but I think we are finally like almost done with this problem. And and if that's not something you're interested in doing, then just leave a review. Share this with someone else. Help someone else find out about this. Uh, send us feedback, all the things, all the details. We're going to share it all with you at the end of this. For our members, stick around. For everybody else, thank you so much. We have spoken.
Stay classy, Sereno.
Rise, Inquisitors.
Okay, members, welcome back. Thank you as always for your wonderful support. You're what makes everything happen. Alex, what's the next Tales of you want to see?
Good question. My answer might be a little unpopular, but I would like a tale of the old Republic. I would like to
Yes.
know. Okay, maybe not unpopular. I would like to hear some like whether it's something about like some of the Sith Lords, like Bane or Malgus or something that we have read about, or whether or Revan or if it's some people I've never even heard of. Like I want a canonical glimpse at the old Republic and what life was like back then.
And by this, you don't mean the High Republic. You're going even
No,
further back
no,
than that.
I'm
Thousands of years.
talking. What? How many years? 10,000 years?
Yeah.
Thousands of years before
Yeah.
the stories we have now. Like early.
When the Sith were in legions.
Yeah, there were legions of
Mm.
Siths. Malachor was not Malachor. What's the other Sith planet? That's gonna bother me.
Oh,
Nope. Whatever. The other Sith planet, I'll think of the name at some point and yell it out aggressively. But when there was just thousands of Sith alive and the Jedi were numbering in the tens of thousands, and it was just such a different time. I'm very curious to see a tale from that time period. Probably involving one of the characters that we know at least. Like again, whether it's a Revan or a Bane or someone, I think would be really cool to see. But also unknown characters. I'm open to it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Especially as we're diving more into the history of the Sith with the Acolyte, I would love to see the Darth Bane trilogy in some way made into tales. They might do something like write a female character who's not a femme fatale. That could be fun.
What?
But yeah, I think that would be a great story. And yeah, it doesn't have to be though that. It could also just be about the High Republic, doing High Republic things. And maybe back to the time when the Jedi were chancellors of the High Republic and they had a very different power relationship.
I remembered Moraband, formerly known as Korriban, the home world of the
Korriban.
Sith, the home world of the Sith in that era.
Yeah.
Erin, what about yourself?
I don't know. I kind of want to steal Alex's answer. I'm gonna be honest. Darth Revan is one of my favorite characters. I mean, the Revan story in general is just so intriguing, and especially I just love how in the game it's a non-gendered role, which is awesome. And so I think it leaves a lot open for the story. But I'm just a sucker for a cool outfit, and the Force lightning ball he does. I don't know. I do really like the characters that we have laid out in the Old Republic games. I would love if they would canonize some of them, even if it was like Darth Malgus, him and his very femme fatale Twi'lek girlfriend, Lena Daru. She is on my cosplay list. I just need to learn how to sew a flight suit.
Yeah.
But there's a lot that I love from the Old Republic that I'd really like to see from that like long, long ago when there were temples of Sith students and they
Mhm.
had battles, and it was very much that your final test is to kill the other person. Like you're sparring with live lightsabers. You're not sparring
Right.
for fun.
Yeah, I would love that. I think those would be really interesting stories. And I think it would be really fun to explore. I think for me, I want more Tales of the Empire. And I'll admit, I've gotten a little focused on something. Have you guys read the book Lost Stars?
No.
Nope.
It is, I think, one of my favorite of the books. I think it's by Rebecca Gay. Um, and I will check that though and put it in the show notes. It's about two young kids who grow up together. They kind of have crushes on each other, and they join the Empire together in part because their planet was just devastated by the Separatists, and the Empire brings peace. And they
Mhm.
both wanted to be pilots, and all they've ever wanted to be was TIE fighter pilots. And then over the course of the book, as they start to encounter more and more of the terrible things the Empire is doing, they go in very different directions. And you could give that story itself, like literally those characters, or you could give a story like that. Um, but I want to see more of the rank and file. I think one of the things that was great about the original Star Wars movie is that all of the Empire people were all just like nameless, literally faceless stormtroopers,
Mhm.
or like these clearly fascist, awful, terrible people. And that's an easy story because it's easy to hate those people. But empires aren't made up of those people. Empires are often made up of people who, for whatever reason, think they're doing the right thing. And I just love stories like that and stories of where that's challenged. So I think I'd love to see
Yeah,
that. I would love to see Tales of the Old Republic. I think that could be great. Um, this is going to be the most boring thing to everybody else I know, but I want to see Tales of the Senate.
I know it.
Of
No,
course.
that's interesting to me.
No, I would enjoy that too.
I actually really like. I really like in Andor. I eat up all of the Senate proceedings, and like
Oh, I love it. I
I
love it.
love hearing like how the galaxy is working from that standpoint. 100%. I would also be down for that.
And I think you could do it during any time. You could do it like during the 10 years between the second and third prequel, when like Chancellor Palpatine is like slowly acquiring more and more power.
Hmm.
You could do it like during the early days of the Empire, or I think even maybe the best, you could do it in the early days of the New Republic. You
Yep.
know,
Mhm.
Yep.
make it Tales of the New Republic and show us Leia. You know, I don't necessarily want the deep fakeness, but like her daughter can do the voice pretty well. I think Billy Fisher is her name. And to me, like I don't want her to play live action Leia, but like animated Leia would feel like that could work, you know?
Yeah.
And yeah, and just to see like how all that plays out could be great.
Yeah, I agree.
That would be awesome. Maybe this is this isn't what you're saying. What I want is I want like a Senate drama. I want to hear about the affairs. I want to hear about the bribes. I want to see the affair between Rio Chuchi and Commander Fox. Like, ooh,
Aaron
I
wants
also want the politics,
Yeah,
but I want
I
the tea.
Aaron wants to
I
set
want
it after dark.
no, no, no.
Yes,
I want West Wing and Erin wants Scandal. And
exactly.
I think there's middle ground in like the Secretary of State, or I don't know, Veep might be too comedic, but in that realm of political drama,
Yeah.
I'm here for that. I'm totally here for that. I don't mind a little spice. I don't mind a little Star Wars After Dark. We can do that.
Yeah.
So, all right. Any other last thoughts?
I think I'm good.
Great little episodes they gave us.
Yeah,
They really
fantastic
did.
stuff.
They really did. Thank you so much for being able to discuss this with us. We're gonna have more Bad Batch content coming to you soon, hopefully the same week that this goes live. On behalf of myself, Aaron, and Alex, thank you all so much for being members. We have spoken.
Stay classy again, Sereno.
What
Fuck it
is
up,
this?
Reno.
Couldn't have
Just
done it
cut
better.
it. Just cut it.
There we go.